Recording in progress. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hosts in the Shell, the podcast that loves to celebrate Cyberpunk Day.
Woohoo!
I left a pause there for you to fill it with like a woohoo, and you did.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm stoked to be on this Cyberpunk Day special show.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Special edition. Well, first we'll introduce ourselves, then we'll explain what we're here to waffle on about. I'm John Richter. I'm joined, as always, by my fellow high-tech low-life, Matt Adcock.
Hey, it's me, and I'm cyberpunk to the max because I'm just finished creating what could be my first cyberpunk children's storybook to get them young, get them into this whole genre from an early age.
Great. Why have I never even thought about that? Like, sort of, what would you call that? Sort of cyberpunk.
Well, mine's called Battle Mages Don't Clean Their Teeth. So going for a little health check as well there, so hopefully the parents will dig it. And equally, it's artwork by a 16-year-old autistic girl called India. And she has left her characters like black and white. So if you are autistic, or even if you just need some mindful coloring, you can design your own outfits on the coloring scheme of the heroes and villains as you go through. And so it's a kind of like interactive in the old school way. We need some pens or some crayons, or if you're allowed them in the ward or whatever,
That's amazing stuff. And that probably, for anyone who doesn't know us, is a neat way of introducing what we do. So basically, we're both writers. We're both huge cyberpunk fans. We are by no means professed to be genre experts, but we just love a load of cyberpunk stuff: books, media, telly, films, all the big hitters, and
games,
video games, absolutely. Board games.
I'm going to say bands as well, because I want to talk about a band in a bit.
So yeah, we are sort of genre agnostic. Oh, sorry, genre very specifically cyberpunk, but media agnostic. Whatever form your cyberpunk takes, we're happy to talk about it on this show.
Inject it into us. It's all good.
So yeah, for anyone who doesn't sort of listen regularly, we have a fortnightly episode where we usually have a guest on because we are the hosts in the shell, so we like to host people. But for today, we thought we wouldn't bother, and we just interview each other. Hope that's okay.
Indeed, it's okay with me, so that's cool.
And it's okay with me too. That's lucky.
And just listen to everyone turning right off now, going like, "Oh, go get a cup of tea," but like it's fine.
Like, oh, I thought they were going to have a cool guest on. I must admit as well, I do. When you've got to get. Every single guest we've had on the show has been absolutely lovely. Everyone's just been dead nice, really chatty, friendly.
Does that mean that everyone in the cyberpunk fraternity is lovely, or have we just been lucky, do you think?
I think they are all lovely, is the answer.
Let's hope so.
So if there are any listeners who disagree and want to prove that they're horrible people, then send all your hate mail to Matt Adcock.
Yeah.
Nominate
your cyber arsehole.
But yeah, I do still, even notwithstanding the fact they're all lovely, I still get a bit nervous before recording, and sweat profusely and waffle excitedly at the beginning, and then calm down gradually over the course of the show. Whereas this one, I feel really chilled out. That's good, isn't it?
It's all good. It's all good. We're on safe territory here.
ASMR style cyberpunk,
yes.
Smooth, augmented body parts.
So, John, how do you want to kick us off then?
The plan is, we thought it might be a bit of fun for us to both introduce just some of our favourite cyberpunk stuff. But we've tried to set ourselves a bit of a rule, which is we have to pick things that we haven't already covered on the show. And because we're about 20 episodes in at the time of recording, we've kind of ticked off a lot of the big ticket stuff, haven't we? We've done Blade Runner, we've done Terminator, we've done William Gibson, Neuromancer.
Snow Crash.
No Crash. We've done Ghost in the Shell, obviously, because that's kind of what I named.
Yeah, your favourite fourth Matrix film?
We've done everyone's favourite Matrix sequel that we didn't argue about at all. So yeah, it's getting slightly. Well, I'll say it's getting slightly trigger. It's not, is it? Because there's
No, it's
absolutely
so much good stuff. And also, hopefully, if you just any of those things we've just talked about, if you're even remotely excited about them, you should definitely go back and listen to our, episodes about them. Hear us wittering on about them, hearing our much more informed guests talking about them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah, it's good. Back catalogue in it. Just search for Host in the Shell. We're on Twitter at Host in the Shell. Just Google it and you'll find us via the pun name. Will lead you right to us. Do you want to kick off then, Matt, with your first chosen topic?
I would. I'd love to kick off. Thank you, John. My first pick is not only a fantastic book that I read, and might be the book that got me into cyberpunk in the first place. Because when it came out in 2002, I wasn't, it wasn't really a genre that I'd kind of skirted with, but I hadn't fallen fully in love with it, despite The Matrix having come out just a few years before. And this book is called Altered Carbon.
So funny. We haven't compared our lists beforehand.
It's true. This would be a good time to confess if you've also chosen Altered Carbon.
I've put Altered Carbon on my 3.
Yes,
that's
John.
So good.
Oh,
Brilliant.
We could both talk about it then. That's cool, right?
Meld. Oh no, but fire away. You kick us off.
This book spoke to me on so many levels because of the whole backing yourself up onto a cortical stack,
Yeah.
And having a sleeve you can download into as a new body. I thought that is just awesome. But then what is a beautiful element of it is that Richard K. Morgan, as he likes to be known, he brought in the sort of the church opposition to this sort of whole thing, which you can just absolutely imagine happening. If we do crack this tech, you can guarantee that there'll be outspoken Catholic vicars and priests out there saying, no, this is of the devil, and it will be a massive schism, and it will be heresy to get yourself backed up, which kind of makes it more exciting, and you kind of want to do it. But
what's interesting about that, though, I think in the book exposed, because I've read Altered Carbon, the first book. I haven't read. I think it's a trilogy, isn't it? I think there's 2 sequels.
At least 3, yeah.
But I haven't read them. Only read the first one, and I saw the Netflix adaptation of it.
The most expensive Netflix series to date. Which
I thought was decent.
I enjoyed it too.
It's not. The book's better, and that's not in the typical annoying, the book's better kind of way. Sometimes I just think, they're 2 different things, aren't they? They're 2 different products, and a book is longer than a TV show. But I had some issues with the TV show, whereas I thought the book was just an absolute delight from start to finish. Just amazing.
Oh, it's so enrapturing. That's kind of what I kicked off with, here, in that this is a book that one of the few books that really you can't stop reading it. You are loving the deeper Easter egg references that the author's just throwing in there. And then just to finish on my religious vibe here, another bit that some people may not have got, but the whole bit, when you have lived multiple lifespans in different bodies, they call you a meth. And most people might think that's a meth head's drug, kind of messed upness. But this is actually a reference to the biblical guy called Methuselah, who, if you read his story, he's it's pretty a sad story, or if it's real, it's a good story anyway. But I love all that.
But it's got loads. There's loads going on, and I think you're spot on it. The book is a page-turning thriller. It's really gripping. You just can demolish it really quickly.
Yeah.
But there's loads of depth and fantastic kind of world building and ideas. And I think your earlier point about sort of the opposition that will inevitably exist to that sort of technology. That's one of the great sort of dualities in cyberpunk. Really, it's really easy to create a cyberpunk story in a world that has got a core idea that makes it dystopian. So it's wouldn't it be awful if everyone had human augmentation, and it's taken over our bodies, and our sense of identity has been lost, and the classic sort of Ghost in the Shell idea, which is a very good idea.
Yeah.
But the point is, there's also loads of benefits and upsides to that technology, because there has to be, because why would it exist otherwise in the first place? Why would people want it? So clearly, in a society where you can back up your brain and your consciousness to your cortical stack, that's at first glance, that's utopian, isn't it? It's like, well, why would I not want to live? Why would I want to die because my body's become old and decrepit? Well, I wouldn't want to. I'd want to live and swap it out into a younger model. It sounds brilliant. It doesn't sound bad at all. But of course, the book then does make it show you how it could become bad when people can't afford. But only the rich people can have good quality, muscly, youthful bodies. And if you're kind of a working schmuck, you just end up with like a sort of crappy, knackered one, you know?
And also, like, it's not just the rituals, like, you know, the power people. So these days it would be, you know, Liz Truss re-sleeving herself and getting up to all sorts of hijinks in different sleeves. And probably doing it really ineptly, and people would be able to spot her anyway because of, like, you know, despite the different looks.
Because she won't be able to contain herself. She just blurt out some terrible economic policies. And people, hang on a minute, you're Liz Truss.
I love rich people. I love rich people. But I think, you know, that's the concept, isn't it? But my main problem with Altered Carbon, if you have to have a problem with it, is that is it actually you? So I upload Matt Adcock to a stack, and then I die or whatever, you know, end in some horrific, you know, misdemeanor, and but then they re-sleeve me. But is that actually me? Because it's a copy of me, right? So the me that just died, does it? How's that bridged? You know, I didn't. That's the one thing I didn't quite get. Is sure there's another Matt walking around, but you know, like in DT's book Winger, you know, there could be another Matt walking around now. I wouldn't be experiencing what he's experiencing. But he would be me.
And it completely calls into question, doesn't it? Just the nature of self and identity and consciousness, because you know, that is one thing our brains have. You know, one of the quirks of the human brain is it's self-aware of itself, which I guess is an evolved thing to make it a better risk.
Most people are, yes.
Sorry, yeah, to varying degrees, it's a spectrum. But yeah, so it's almost like, you know, our brains have evolved to be better quality risk mitigation machines to help keep our bodies alive, and as a result, they've spawned this kind of. I often think it's almost just like a freak occurrence. It's like a horrible mutation that we're all self-aware. It's like a curse in many ways. But so once you accept that, yes, brains are consciousness exists, you're self-aware. If you replicated it, like literally, if there was just a, you know, like in the Prestige, like a David Bowie machine that you just climb in and electrocutes you, and there's two John Richters, would the first one be simultaneously aware of itself in two bodies, which sounds blooming horrible, or would it just be a duplicate? They're two separately self-aware things.
Yeah.
But if it's the latter, then how can teleportation or anything? It seems like it would just be a con. So you know, you get into your teleporter, you'd appear in some other destination. You would think that you were still you, but you're not. Your old you would be dead.
That's different to stacking, John, because as I investigate in Complete Darkness, you have streams where you can actually you know, send yourself through something like a teleport, or if you're unlucky, only bits of you get shot through and the rest of you don't. But that's unfortunate. But in that one, I did talk about how, you know, it took a long time, a lot of experimentation to rebuild the nervings that are actually firing as you teleport, so that even though the brain's exactly the same, it's what's happening in that brain that makes you you. You know, the impulses and the neurons firing. So as long as you've got that exact state of thinking, you won't know that you're not you, because when you jump out the other side, you're thinking the same thing seconds before you went in. So,
but what if the thing that is thinking that same thing is not the same thing? And
100% guaranteed it is, or 99%, because obviously there's some horrific problems in the stream initially, which I might write a side story about. You know, what happened to those people who didn't come out the same as they went in.
Like a cyberpunk Jeff Goldblum The Fly type.
Now you're talking about it.
Sounds ace. And off topic as usual, but there's a thing there about like artificiality of the. So I am on record as having said this. Like, if you built a brain that was exactly the same as a brain, the fact that, but you built it out of plastic and wires and metal, and then turned it on, I can't see any logical. I mean turn it on in a switch sense. Not like,
hey brain, how you doing? How you doing?
Not like stroked it and sorry. And well, that too. Maybe you could try that. Maybe that's the secret.
Wait.
I see no reason why that machine, just because one machine is made out of fleshy blob grey matter and one's made out of plastic and white, they can still do the same functions. So why wouldn't the plastic wire brain become self-aware immediately? So it's almost like if you replicate the structure, you don't need to bother understanding how it works, because
Yeah.
if it's identical, then could you not just 3D print a brain?
One day, perhaps we will, John. Perhaps we will.
That's a good way of answering my question, actually, which is I don't know.
You're entirely right. But as a sci-fi writer, you should know that we can make up anything, and kind of get away with it.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Blag. I mean, I wonder to what extent Richard K. Morgan just sort of, researched and looked into the science behind this, or did he just completely make it up and blag it? Because
Maybe we should get him on the show and ask him.
I sent an inquiry to his website, but no reply. So if you're out there, Richard, we'd love to have you on.
He must be watching Cyberpunk Day. This is our call. This is our call to the universe.
That's it. Hey, we probably should say really honoured to be a part of Cyberpunk Day.
We love you guys.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and to everyone who's tuning in. This is great because it's an annual celebration. Exactly like Hello, Matt's mum.
Yeah, that's an in joke. But anyway, there you go. All right, so we've done Altered Carbon. Yeah, we'll add that to the Hall of Fame. We actually agree on that one. That's cool.
Do we need a name for the Cyberpunk Hall of Fame?
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
There must be something that rhymes with the word fame that has connotations of robotics, but I can't think of what it is.
Do you want to? I mean, it's kind of your turn, even though you jumped on my first one. So
Hall of Maimed, Hall of.
All right.
Leave it with me. So I'm going to pick. Well, while we're on a bookish theme,
okay,
and we are writers after all, I thought I would pick a writer rather than one specific book. Ooh. And again, this is in that, that sort of grey area that's not quite cyberpunk, but actually when you analyse it, it has so many of the constituent parts of cyberpunk that it probably is cyberpunk.
Is it me?
I thought long and hard about picking you, Matt. Now I feel terrible for
That's
not
fine. No offense taken. It's fine.
I am going to pick Ian M. Banks.
Yes. Oh, crowd goes wild.
Which I thought you would like. Well, because me and Matt met through being writers on the internet who have written
Who would have thought that was a thing?
It's exactly this newfangled thing called the internet. And Matt's book that he's alluded to, Complete Darkness, I've written a few. Is a science fiction cyberpunk, absolute bonkers onslaught of crazy ideas and adventure in your face, which I love.
Thank you. That's going on the second reprint.
Yes, you quote me on that. And I've written books in a few different genres, bit of crime, bit of horror. My cyberpunk book is called Auxiliary, and I won't waffle on about that right now, but please read it.
But also, I'd say, isn't your London 2042 a bit cyberpunky?
Oh, well, that's it. It's called London 2039 Auxiliary. Yeah. Is its full title.
There you go. Sorry, I got a date wrong, but I have read it.
It's all right. I like yours because yours pushes it a bit into the future, which is helpful because when I wrote it, 2039 seemed a long way away, and now it's not.
Yeah, it's basically next year.
Not likely that all the robots are going to be around. My prediction is rendered obsolete.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing you with your metal arm, mate.
You've got 17 years to crack it, guys. Come on, get moving. And one thing that we sort of bonded over was our mutual love of Ian Banks, the sadly relatively recently passed away Scottish writer. And he is just what an amazing visionary idea smith.
Stunning.
But also a brilliant writer. So his books are just so much, he's the level of his sort of innovation is just beyond, he's in the top kind of stratosphere.
Mortal men, yeah,
just amazing. Now he writes under two names. He writes under Ian Banks because that's his name.
John Richter. Oh no,
I wish. And he writes under Ian M. Banks, and he used that to kind of delineate his sort of science fiction writing from his slightly more normal but not that normal writing.
Disturbing crime, you can call it.
Yeah, he's still, and some of those still add elements of science fiction in, to be honest, like The Bridge. And,
The Bridge is 100% the secret culture novel, which is sci-fi. But anyway, it's a whole other conversation there. So
yes, no, but so there was a bit of cross-pollination between those two pseudonyms anyway, or the two names. But Ian M. Banks was what he wrote his science fiction works under. And a lot of those, as you say, were about the culture, which is this very, very, very far future, basically a utopian universe-spanning civilization, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Almost like the ultimate evolution of humanity, and it's subsumed other races and species and aliens and AIs are basically running the show.
yeah. Quirky named AIs, which I'm all about. You know, the um the names of his spaceships, it was autonomous spaceships, are some of my favorite things.
Yeah,
And in fact, there's a
brilliant.
whole Twitter stream that still exists to this day of just culture ship names. You should definitely check out.
Oh, I will. I would follow that. That's yeah, because the culture ship names are things. They're sort of like horses, maybe like Grand National Horse Racing.
I
So that
guess, yeah.
they call
Take it to the
things.
nth degree, but with like massive weaponry and star crossing capabilities and big enough to hold thousands of people and support life. But yeah,
Apart from that, they're
yeah,
basically
exactly like a
horses.
horse. Yeah,
So that they'll be called things like the sense of urgency or
yeah,
the meat fucker. Or oh, don't know if I'm allowed to swear on Cyberpunk Day. Might need to
yeah.
bleep that out.
I love what's the one an unfortunate overuse of force or something. I was like, excellent.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly it. So, and they all, and it's good because they're both convincingly superior intellects, and it's always really difficult for a human writer to write an intellect that is beyond a human
It's a
because
good point.
you're a bit constrained by your own brain. But he
Yeah,
manages it. But equally, they do often seem like they like having a bit of a muck about and a laugh as well.
yeah,
Um,
and I love that. I mean, and that's in the spirit of that. Gareth Powell has taken on the mantle of the new Ian Banks better than any other writer that I've come across.
oh
And he has
wow,
spaceships that have got funky names like that. And he's got one called Trouble Dog, who is and part of her brain is a teenage girl, so she's a massively dangerous warship, but she's also a little bit kind of petulant and kind of like gets a
yeah.
laugh. It's great.
And that's what you want because it's so easy to cyberpunk is I mean genres by definition are made up of tropes and
Yeah,
cliches because that's what delineates them as a genre but there are some ones that are more tired maybe and overused than others and one of them that I think is probably a bit tired is the a hyper intelligence will be emotionless
yeah,
and emotions are the preserve of stupid
meat bags.
meat bags like us. Well, who says? Why can't you have a hyper intelligence that also likes having fun and hedonistic, laughs and pleasure, and you can. And Ian Banks wrote about him, or Ian
Yep,
M. Banks did.
yeah, good man.
Um,
And rest in peace, Ian, whoever you are. He did a great service for mankind with his writing.
yeah, hugely recommended. And just the final thing on Ian M. Banks is not every book. Well, the culture knowledge you can kind of read them in any order. You don't need to worry about them being sequential. They're all standalone.
Yeah, I love that. How does he do that? Because that's
Yeah,
a really hard trick to pull off.
agreed. Agreed. All set in literally in the same universe, but
Yeah,
different characters in every. There are some recurring ones, but you don't need to read them in order.
yeah, and they're like Easter eggs. When you meet someone that you've met
Yeah.
before, you're like, yes, excellent.
And then he did write some sort of standalone, which are not in that universe. I think the one that's
That's true.
probably the most, you may disagree with this, but the most cyberpunky one is probably Against a Dark Background.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you for once. I think you're
Hey,
right.
that might be a first for this
It might be.
for this
Gosh,
podcast.
no, we've agreed on lots of things. Hardware and Terminator and so many Akira and go Host in the Shell,
That's true.
Ghost in the
That's true.
Shell. Oh yeah,
But yeah, that book in particular, recommend if you're a cyberpunk lover who has never read Ian M. Banks,
firstly,
maybe
shame
that's a
on
good
you,
place to
but
start.
secondly,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
get out of here. But no, not at all. So that was my first pick. Matt, back cyber ball back in your
Oof.
court.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do something. So my next pick is a bit controversial because it's written by this guy, and he's since he rose to comic book fame and also knocked out some novels. It came to light, and the Guardian did a massive expose on him that he had about 50 girlfriends on the go at any one time,
All
and
right.
not in a and it wasn't to the illegal extent of like abusiveness, but it's not a good look, is it, when you've literally told your comic book fans what hour to come to your hotel room and he had a whole succession of them over a weekend, and then they all
God,
found out
yeah.
about each other and they started this forum and they were like, what's this about? And he was literally sending the same text message to 50 different women at the same
Just
time.
like a form like a generic
Yeah,
cover letter. Like to whom it may
yeah,
concern.
come for shag at X o'clock. I'm like, what? So I do not applaud that. That is terrible. But what is fascinating is that even these women who are horribly heartbroken and used, to use a better word, um, they didn't want to cancel him because they thought his stuff was so good that it would be wrong for it to be cancelled. So that's quite an
Oh,
accolade in itself. And the guy I'm talking about is called Warren Ellis.
okay.
And the or the comic book of his that I've picked is Transmetropolitan, which, if you haven't read, is a highly exciting read. It's to set the scene. It's a little bit sort of 2000 AD kind of mega city. Follows this guy called Spider Jerusalem. I mean, what a fantastic name for a guy.
Yeah.
He's a subversive journalist, and he describes his world as a transhumanist future. He's this Spy Jerusalem is your typical kind of burnt out guy in a dystopian world, but he gets called back for that one more job, and he can't quite resist his journalistic sense, and he has to go. And in fact, to get a publishing deal sorted out, he's got to just kind of nail it all. But it's insane, His creativity is nuts. Even if you just do one thing, just go and look at the cover for Transmetropolitan Volume One, Back on the Street, and don't just glory in Spider Jerusalem, who's got one red lens, one green lens in his glasses, and a spider tattoo on his bald head. But just look at the background artwork, because there's like packets of stuff lying on the floor, but which include a bottle of Sin gin and plague cigarettes, and like just his world he's created is so much fun, just looking at every frame and finding the background details of this dystopia nightmare that is very colourful on page, but it's fully disturbing. And
Brilliant.
maybe it's not any shock that he was a bit of a troubled character when it comes to his personal life, because it's mental. It's mentalness spooling out onto the page in a future that no one would want to see happen.
I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at a picture of Spider Jerusalem, the infamous renegade gonzo journalist of the future.
That's the one.
Like you say, a tattoo of a spider.
Gonzo's a good word, actually. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. And it looks great. Looks great. And yeah, clearly a prolific and really, really revered sort of comic book writer.
Oh man, he's done so much other stuff. He's written for Marvel, DC. He's been everywhere, this guy. And his stuff he's done Batman. It's like, I think it's Batman Grave, or the Grave series of his Batman series that will probably be made into something at some point, TV wise. But yeah, I mean, it just shows to show, if you're a comic book creator and I've only got one comic book to my name, don't let it go to your head. Don't be an asshole with it. Because it's not cool. Let your product do your talking, and try and be a nice human as well, because that's probably a better thing to do.
Well, it says, yeah, it's topics as well as transhumanism also covered: nanotechnology, cryonics, mind transfer, human enhancement. So he's got the full gamut there of
cyberpunk tropes, all tick tick tick. Plus it's funny. It's got a beautiful dark humor in it, which is hard to do.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? And I don't want to go too far off topic again.
No. That's not like us at all.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you wanted, I suppose, if you wanted a podcast that stays on topic, maybe this one is not for you.
It's probably not the one.
But it's that thing about the art, separating the art from the artist, isn't it? And that remains tricky. The obvious example of that is H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. I love H.P. Lovecraft's work. I'm a big fan. It's been very influential on me. It permeates modern horror culture and video games and all that stuff. But H.P. Lovecraft was a horrible racist, and that is a fact, unfortunately.
Absolute scumbag, yeah.
And so it is a challenge, isn't it, when you really rate and revere an artist and you love their work, and then you find that they've got a bit of dodgy stuff going on in their life. It's a tricky one.
It is tricky, and I would say Asimov as well. Because like Asimov, you can almost say, oh, he was a product of his time, and he's been held up for being very patriarchal and sexist, which I would use as a shield for complete darkness, because people say, oh, that's very patriarchal and sexist. But my reason for doing that is to show that a world disintegrating into a hell we don't want to be in. His was just like, this is how it should be in the future. So there's a difference, I think, there. Hopefully readers will make that difference. And I'm no way putting myself on the same category as Asimov, although if in Waterstones, if you find both our books, you will find we're quite close to each other. Both our surnames have
which was by design.
Of course, yeah. Thanks, Mum. Yeah.
And it's and that even that in itself is a particularly science fiction cyberpunk future. Is any genre that projects forward, you're not necessarily saying I want society to be this way.
No, absolutely.
But you might be saying I think society is going to be this way, or you might be just saying in this particular hypothetical society it happens to be this way.
Yeah, and it's not a good thing. Yeah,
and therefore it's not necessarily a good thing. And you can make mistakes, you can miss things, you can get things wrong. I think in my novel, in Auxiliary, we talked about before, I think I hypothesized
Yeah.
a sort of a third set of pronouns that have been widely adopted for people who identified
Oh
as
yeah.
non-gender specific. So neither male nor female, they would be neutral people with their
Yeah.
own pronoun. And then I quite rightly got criticized by people who were like, okay, John, that's great. But what about all the rest of the gender spectrum? Why are there no
Yeah.
other trans characters in your book?
You didn't dig deep enough.
No, and so I think that was fair. That was a sort of totally fair comment, and there's lots for us to reflect on, you know.
And equally, you can't always go back and update your work because, like, if we had, um, Asimov on the stack and then we rebooted him up now, and it was actual Asimov, not just some copy of him. We went to him, oh, hey, look, man, your views are very outdated now, and society's moved on, and women rights are all what we should be, about. He might go, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sorry about that. It was just of its time, and I need to refresh it. So rewrite half the Foundation trilogy and the iRobots films, and everything else.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
well,
obviously,
maybe that's the answer. Maybe maybe in our next collaborative novel, we hypothesize a world where cancelled people can be brought back to answer for their crimes
wow,
and given a chance at redemption. Maybe
that's
that's
we've
it.
just given that away, John. Everyone's like, that's a good idea. They're writing that now.
It's sort of like cryogenics, but it's like cancelogenics.
Yeah,
That
we need to
that
work on
needs
the name.
that needs work.
Anyway, back to you. I'm batting it back to you.
Well, I am going for a sort of slightly wide-ranging topic, but it's cyberpunk video games that are not the cyberpunk video game.
Oh, not 27/7.
Yeah, allow me to explain myself. So, Cyberpunk 2077 is the one, if you said cyberpunk video game, that's the one people would think of because of its massively sort of infamously botched launch and all the
Yeah,
glitches and bugs. And then actually, sort of anecdotally, a lot of people are now enjoying it and saying it's a great game. The reason I have not picked that is partly because we're going to cover it in a future episode, and partly because I haven't
ooh.
played it yet.
Oh,
Um,
travesty. Oh,
and I think in a way, there's a thing there about I've sort of been put off by all that negativity at the outset. So I have no doubt that I will enjoy it, particularly now it's been allegedly kind of fixed. But there's
yeah.
just a bit of a, when you're just left with this bit of a bad taste and you're like, I think I'll just play Sonic Mania instead.
I thought the cooler answer would have been to say your pleasure delaying.
Yeah, yes, which is what I meant to say,
Yeah,
of
okay.
course, to maximize it when I finally do
The anticipation can be better than the thing sometimes.
when I finally do get my silver hand on it.
Yeah.
So you'd be forgiven for thinking there's one cyberpunk game and that's it. There are actually a shed load of great games in the cyberpunk genre, and I just thought some of the perhaps slightly lesser well-known ones would deserve a bit of a shout out. Because I love video games. I think they, as a uniquely immersive medium, are arguably the best way to tell stories, or the best way to tell stories of a certain type. Whereas
Yes.
books, movies, etc., are inherently a bit more passive. You're observing a story happening instead of actually participating in it. And one of the most immersive ones I've ever played, in the cyberpunk genre, was Observer. I don't know if you ever played that
Ooh.
one, Matt.
No, this is a new for me. I'm putting it on my to playlist.
Honestly, you'd love it.
Tell us
Observer
about
was
it.
it was pretty much Rutger Hauer's last. I think it was one of his, if not his last acting role, and
Wow.
he voices
I
the
love
main.
Rutger Hauer. He
What
was
a
I mean the hit job,
legend!
but yeah, everything's done really, but yeah.
Well, and of course Blade Runner, of course.
I mean obviously, but yeah. For
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
Hitcher,
sorry.
it just freaks me out so much. But I love that. And we used to be able to quote it with my mates. Like we used to hide each other's chop his fingers off and hide them in French fries and stuff for gags and that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. Well, he doesn't do any of that in this game, I'm afraid.
Oh,
Afraid to
okay.
break the news. But it's a video game. It came out in, I think it was 2019. I will check that.
Ooh, pretty recent then.
Oh yeah, sorry. First released in 2017. I apologize. I think it got a bit of an updated sort of graphical boosted version a little bit later. So
Yeah,
you get it
they are
on,
want to do that these days, aren't they?
yeah, like sort of The Last of Us being the recent one where they've
Yeah,
gone
they're
past
talking
that
about
one.
games that are not even 5 years old now
I
being
know
remade. I'm like, why?
it is getting a bit silly, but this
Yeah.
one is this yeah. So it came out originally in 2017. You get it on Xbox, PS4 at the time, Windows obviously. And Rutger Hauer plays the main character is this detective, but in effect it is a psychological horror game. So
Nice.
he goes to an apartment building to investigate a murder. There's a headless corpse there, and then the apartment, and it's this real dystopian cyberpunk, like everyone's got augmented eyes and bodies, so there's all
Right.
sorts of holographic projection, as in sort of augmented reality overlays of things that aren't actually there, but obviously you,
Nice.
you see through his eyes, so you see them all. The building is then locked down. I think I can't remember if it's like an alert around like almost like a virus outbreak, and it's basically like, oh, my implants have gone moldy, and I've now got this horrible brain disorder. So the building's locked down. So he's trapped in the building. So all you can do is kind of knock on the different apartment doors, talk to the residents of this.
Wait, this is reminding me of a book I read about an apartment that locked down and things were bad happening in it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Key inspirations all over the place. And yeah, you're quite right, Matt. Actually, it did inspire one of my books, my techno thriller from last year, The Warden, which is set in this sort of locked down an apartment building you are not permitted to leave. Obviously, in my story, it was COVID was the cause, but in this story, it's this other issue. So he's trying to sort of solve this crime, and he has the ability to kind of sort of jack in, as it were, through a special kind of wire to people's sort of chips. You know, the heads.
Going back to our point, hardwired wiring is still a thing in cyberpunk worlds. You know, the whole Wi-Fi thing didn't ever quite take off enough, did it?
Yeah, correct. They didn't. All the best cyberpunk writers never envisaged wireless technology.
Gibson and his, Johnny Mnemonic. Ooh, stick it in my head. I need that wire.
Where's an 8-pin plug to put in my eyeball?
Matrix, stick that. I got to plug myself in.
And I like that even in this game, which is very recent, where obviously they could have put wireless technology. Yeah. And they thought, nah, wires are cooler. Let's just stick with that.
Keep the trope.
I think was fair enough. And so he is able to access basically the memories of these recently deceased people. But it's presented in this Lynchian sort of interactive, weird, surrealist onslaught where you're kind of playing through all these fragments of their memories and their pasts and some of the torments and misfortunes that have led them to live in this crappy apartment building, and obviously the horror of their being murdered. And so it was just this brilliant mashup of, I think one of the reviews sort of said, it's Blade Runner meets Silent Hill, 10 out of 10.
Oh, what a great strapline that is.
I totally agree. So yeah, can't recommend it highly enough. And of course, because Rutger Hauer was approaching the end of his life and very old when he did the voiceover for this, his voice is so grizzled in it, but it works perfectly for this kind of gnarled old detective. It sounds amazing.
I'm all over this. I'm literally, the next thing I do is going to be download it after this game. So
that would probably, if I had to recommend one Cyberpunk video game that isn't the Cyberpunk video game, it would be that one. There's loads of others that deserve a shout out. Everything from Syndicate Wars back in the day.
Yes.
Ruiner was another one I played recently.
Ruiner's fun, yep.
Really fun. What would you call that? Sort of isometric shoot 'em up kind of role playing game action thing, which was cool. But what about you, Matt? Anything you would?
I'd like to chuck Stray in there just because it's beautiful being a cat, and being a cat in the cyberpunk world is even more fun.
Oh, that's a good shout. Actually, Stray has had loads and loads of really good feedback, hasn't it?
Yeah, and because you have to be a special kind of narcissistic scumbag not to like cats, and so getting to run away from baddie robots and just outwit them and explore this cyberpunk world, because I wasn't ready for it to be quite as big as it is, and I enjoyed the whole exploration element of that game, and it's drawn beautifully as well. The whole kind of thing is a very nice experience.
Fantastic, and you're right. So video games are again another one of its the kind of unique properties is they can create, particularly the bigger budget ones now, but as you say, even some of the smaller scale ones are still pretty chunky, 12, 15 hours long. They can create a big world for you to go and explore and immerse yourself in. And it's a Blade Runner, pick that as an example. Yes, we are introduced to this amazingly realized world by Ridley Scott, but that's it. There's the movie for however long it is, 2 hours, and that's all you're getting. You can't go in and immerse yourself and go and look in every corner and go into buildings, and so the exploration aspect in video game cyberpunk worlds is unique, really.
And if my son's watching this, my eldest son, he still dreams of being the guy who writes the lore books. When you go into fire up a computer in a game, or you go into a library and get something off the shelf, he wants to be the guy who's writing that stuff that's in that. Those kind of artificial bits that you may or may not actually have to do. I think it's inspired by Skyrim. So because it took someone almost a year of their life to write all the stuff you can read through in Skyrim.
Like all the sort of optional content on
exactly
scrolls or whatever. Brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah. What a job.
Does it? Yeah. And it is. And you do. It's interesting. You do notice that. That's sometimes on the lower budget games, that's where the quality control. I
Yeah,
suppose this is just as a pedantic writer, but you're reading a audio or text log 103, and then
yep.
there's like typos and errors in it, and you're like, ugh. I suppose you might make a typo if you were being pursued by a necromorphic zombie in the
It's
year
possible.
2050.
Yep.
So yeah, that's true. So we should cut them some slack. Um, Matt, back to you for number three.
All right. I'm going slightly left field again here. I'm going to take you back to 1982. Many of you weren't around probably in then, but so this is a history lesson as well. I was very much around, and I had my whole life changed by a band called Zig Zig Sputnik.
All
Um,
right, okay, I have heard of them.
these chancers basically, by former Generation X, Tony James, who's a lovely guy, by the way. Um, they just arrived fully manufactured on the scene with looking like cyberpunk wannabes with huge hair, kind of spiky hair, fishnets. If they could have had cybernetic organism arms back in the 1982, they would have done. They probably would have body morphed themselves, but they looked like nothing else around and sounded completely kind of manufactured and semi-artificial. But had Giorgio Moroder producing their stuff, and they their first big hit was Love Missile F-111, about talking about US cruise missiles, and so it's still fairly relevant, unfortunately, all these years later. Um, and they just had the attitude. What their secret weapon was is they had kind of a manga-esque sci-fi artwork on their stuff that no other bands had capitalized on in the same way. So they took like the Japanese robot kind of transformer vibe, and so their Flaunt album is just like, yeah, it's almost a bastardized Optimus Prime kind of a boogie version of that. My favorite of their work is one of their latest singles, which called Dancerama, which tanked in the charts, but had the most incredible double sleeve. You could get these beautiful anime characters. Sort of one of them they're kissing, and they've got this little kind of cyber cat looking at them, kind of a little annoyed. Then in the X version, they're having it off, and there's a big, redacted sticker across it saying, and so they went
And the
places
cat
that
looks even more annoyed.
it looked disturbed in that one. Yeah.
Got it. Fuming.
Yeah, fuming. Yeah. I don't know what his beef was, but yeah. Um,
It's interesting that sort of stacks up with the just again immediately googling and looking at Wikipedia, but you'll probably like this. Yeah, the band's builders: high tech, sex, designer, violence, and the fifth generation of rock and roll.
exactly. I mean, they were making the shit up, and it's great because it just kind of, for me, I think it hit at the right time. I was just hitting teenagers, and I was just kind of ready for their attitude. They were kind of like a rebrand of punk, a kind of because one of them had been in the Clash, like yeah, another one's out of Generation X, and so they just kind of brought a cyberpunk to a world that was not ready for it in 1982. I think now they can be appreciated a lot more, and I'm very disturbed at the lack of usage of their songs on soundtracks.
Yeah, I suppose they're one of those groups. I have heard of them. I couldn't
Right.
name a song, and it's almost like and therefore, so it is that thing, like you say, of at some level they've generally permeated popular
Culture,
culture,
yeah.
but they haven't got that one. Maybe that's what you need, like one big hit to.
Yeah, they had their one hit. They got to number two. I don't think they ever had number one. And it was in the John Hughes film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That was their Love Missile F-111. Um, but then it was all downhill from then. But these are the guys who they kind of probably wouldn't have been a KLF if there hadn't been a Zig Zig Sputnik, because they did the sort of the stunts. They put out a press release saying that EMI had given them £4 million, which is a lot of money back in the day.
Yeah.
And then it also turned out to be actually about a third of that, if that, was the actual. But they just kind of took reality to a new level, and they did it in this sort of fake cyberpunk way, but they did it straight faced, and they wanted you to come along with them, and I'll always love them for that.
Sold. No, fantastic. Yeah, just other random facts from my Googlings. Their song Cyberspace Party was a hit in Japan.
Okay, nice. That wasn't one of their biggest hits, surprisingly either.
or maybe not in this country necessarily, but yeah, they went over big
Cool.
in the East.
See,
Um,
I mean, if you're releasing things like Cyberspace Party, that's I think that justifies their being on this show to an extent.
Well, yeah, I mean, the themes and imagery in the band's songs were often influenced by futuristic, dystopian, or post-apocalyptic films such as A Clockwork Orange, The Terminator, Blade Runner, and the Mad Max trilogy.
Yeah,
And then just helpfully, visually, their image included fishnet masks and brightly coloured hair.
indeed. See, there you go. My favorite anecdote, just to finish this bit off, is that they sampled Star Wars, they sampled Blade Runner, and
Oh, brilliant!
had these fantastic quotes in there, just along to sort of some very natty drum machines and some sort of other bits and bobs of music. But unfortunately for them, they hadn't got the rights for these. So when they tried to release this in America, they got
Oh,
immediate cease and desist lawsuits on them from every angle, and they had to get voice actors in to come and like recreate those not quite as good versions of the actual film dialogue.
oh, that's frustrating. Must
Yeah,
be. Imagine that day when they open that letter and it's like,
yeah.
oh,
We're about
bollocks.
to break America, guys. Oh
Yeah,
wait, we can't release anything. Okay.
all our songs have been banned.
Yeah. So
Um,
there you go. That's back to you, John.
we've covered video games, books, music. And of course we've covered the same
Yeah.
book and TV show by mistake. So I've got to quickly scramble for a backup third and final option. And I thought this is either an ingenious way to knit our entire special
Oh,
Cyberpunk Day show together, or it's just a cheap cop out. But I am going to pick.
people will do.
I'm going to pick Cyberpunk in general as my
Yes.
final pick.
Oh,
So what I thought might be good is to just try and articulate why it's good and why it's still worthy of people's attention, why it's relevant, why it's one of the best genres out there, why it's something we love to read in and write in and watch
yeah.
movies in. And I haven't gathered any thoughts for this, so I'm just going
This
to
off the
sort of
cuff, off the
off the
cyber
cuff
cuff.
wing it. I think there's just something about it is it's really interesting to speculate on what the world is going to be like in the future. Like, so I think if you're that way inclined to look forward to the future with interest and fascination rather than with terror and fear, then the vision of the future that Cyberpunk presents, whilst it's got loads and loads of problems, it does also look really cool. So it's like I get that I might be walking down a street that's choked with pollution and toxic waste puddles on the floor, and seemingly is just permanently dark all the time with
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
flickering neon lights that don't work properly and all that. There's probably going to be some big corporation that's running the show and completely mistreating all of the people, but there will be cool little knackered rusty robots running around, and there will be ace jackets with big collars, and I'll probably have a metal arm that if I've been keeping up the maintenance payments, I might be able to, I don't know, crush cans with. And so, yeah, who wouldn't want to live in a world like that?
Nice. Wow, what a way to round off the this special host in the shell Cyberpunk Day random conversation that we've had.
Musings. What about you, Matt? What are you?
Would I like to live in a cyberpunk world?
Well, or why that, and also why Cyberpunk? Why do you like it so much?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I can blame Z6 Sputnik and the all the 80s kind of stuff that came out, and when I was at such a formative age, I think
Yeah.
the video game thing is strong in me as well because it's better than having friends. Thinking you've got a PlayStation or a video console you can just turn on and it will always be there for you. And that kind of wish fulfillment of robotics interacting with humans, of
Mm.
body augmentation, making yourself better than you are, but it all kind of and sometimes fighting the machine is futile. I love the double edged sword of Blade Runner is when you start to realize who even your hero might be a replicant. Sorry, you haven't seen that. Those
Oh
those kind
no!
of yeah.
Spoiler alert! We forgot that bit.
um, it's the incredible imagination that goes into it, and it is looking forward. It is looking to oh, please don't let this happen, but it might, and it could be good, like you said. So there's seeds of hope. There's a lot of despair. But it's an exciting ride, whichever way you're looking at it. Whether you're CEO of a mega corporation, or whether you're a plucky hacker who's gonna change the world by stealing the right data and plugging it in your head. There's so much fun you can have in the cyberpunk world, and that's kind of why I'm still playing 2077, even years after it's come out, because it's such a great world to exist in. I've got a little talking gun that I'm very attached to, who makes sarcastic comments to me, as I go into a firefight. He's like, "Oh, you probably wanted to hit him and not miss, didn't you?" I was like, "Thanks, man." Yeah,
See, why am I not playing this game?
yeah, you'll enjoy it.
I need to sort that
out. When we talked about Cyberpunk on Twitter and said we're going to do this, someone just said, "Just say Keanu Reeves. That is the answer. That's all you need to pick." And I thought that was quite a fun response, because he's in 2077, he's in the Matrix, he's in Johnny Mnemonic. He's like the poster boy for it, and from a kind of, would you say, from a Western point of view?
Yeah, he is Mr. Cyberpunk, isn't he? That is true. Yeah. And again, the offer is still there.
Yes, Keanu.
Must be something wrong with his email inbox, because he hasn't replied. So yeah, Keanu, when you pick this message up, please get your people to speak to our people, and if you're lucky, we'll let you come on the show.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he?
No brainer. Well, Matt, thank you very much, as usual, for a lovely chat.
No, it was enlightening, I think. It's always good to find out stuff about your co-host that you didn't actually know, unless it's illegal. But then, I don't think we've crossed that line tonight, so that's good.
No, and it's useful blackmail material as well.
Well, that's true, yeah.
If ever necessary. Always good to have something on file. On which unsavoury notes.
Nice.
We will bid everyone goodbye, and thanks for listening.
Have a fantastic Cyberpunk day. I think it's the
have a fantastic rest of your Cyberpunk day. We did our shameless plugs a bit earlier, but
buy John's stuff. It's better than mine.
Don't be ridiculous. Quite the opposite. But just we'll do a quick deal. Buy either of our stuffs, and we'll share the proceeds with veterans of Cyberpunk 2077 when it was still all glitchy and knackered.
Yeah. Cool.
And yes, we'll speak to you again one day soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of Hosts in the Shell, and a massive thank you to the folks at Cyberpunk Day for allowing us to share this special episode with all y'all. Thanks also to Peter Ormrod, who is the composer of our Dead Cool theme music that you would be enjoying if I wasn't talking bollocks over the top of it. I will therefore keep the bollocks to a minimum, and just tell you that if you enjoyed the show, we would love and hugely appreciate a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform, or just a follow on Twitter at HostInTheShell, or on Instagram, where we can be found at hosts_in_the_shell. Or another way to show us some love is just to Google Matt and/or me and sample our various literary wares, including Matt's dark science fiction thriller, Complete Darkness, and its comic book spin-off, and also my most recent novel, Chains, which is a murder mystery set against a backdrop of feuding corrupt politicians, which is, of course, completely unrelated to the current British political climate. Thank you once again, and we'll be back really soon to stream more cyberpunk gibberings into your ear cavities. Goodbye.